Okay, hi everybody, and good afternoon here from Finland. Now, the other morning, I think yesterday morning on the 4th, we had a program, and it was interrupted by technical issues. Now let's see, yeah. Okay, I just plugged my microphone in. So I had said that our program yesterday morning here in Finland was interrupted by some technical issues, and I didn't quite like the way that it turned out, although I think a number of valuable things were said, and I was perfectly happy with the questions and answers, which we will continue. We will cut that section out and make it available to you. But yesterday I did a kind of a replacement video for the early part of yesterday's lecture. So in the evening I did the replacement video, and this is part 2 of that replacement video. And I'm sorry that all of this is not presented in the nicest 7th ray manner, but I'll leave that to my wife. And it is what it is here. And I'm also grateful to Harold Moses for providing yet another background which signals that this is coming from the Moria Federation and the University of the Seven Rays. We're looking at footnotes number 9, 10, and 11, and the thing that sort of wears on me is that there's a very complete kind of commentary, or at least complete for me, on Makara. And I just have to see how much of that I can deal with when working together with you or in a solo manner. This is the 7th solo program. And we've done 30 programs here, but I'll just say the 7th solo program. And that means, of course, that I'm talking to myself. All right. But that's not a problem. Yeah, let's see here. Okay. Well, this is sufficient. We're now about to take up the internal fires that animate and vitalize, and they show themselves, or the old word shew, they shew themselves in a twofold manner. Now, I want to just be sure that this is what you are seeing. Yes, this is what you are seeing, and I want to bring in some of these charts. Now, oh goodness, that was a interesting thing. Okay, when we deal with these charts, and I assume that that is what you are seeing right now, the internal fires that we're talking about are found down here on the etheric physical plane. We are used to the most gross fires, which animate, or at least are found, as latent fire on the lower three subplanes of the systemic, or we sometimes call it the solar plane, the solar etheric physical plane. And then on the fourth through first level, the higher four ethers, we have these, they're still internal fires, but they are called active heat, active. Okay. Excuse me for the occasional cough here. Maybe when you talk too much, the way I do, it is an occupational hazard. Anyway, these are systemic internal fires. Now, from a certain perspective, if we look at the cosmic planes and we consider this whole cosmic map as an etheric physical plane, then cosmically considered, internal fires are much more encompassing. They would combine, they would be found latently on the lower three subplanes, cosmically considered, and actively on the higher four subplanes. Well, that's simply speculative thinking, and it's purely mental, and we cannot know really anything about it. Even the Tibetan demurred when asked about the cosmic astral plane because he said he had not been there. Though if and when he would choose a path on the way of higher evolution, there would come a time when such individuals, such monads really, would be crossing into the cosmic astral plane and maybe towards the cosmic mental plane, but the time for him when he was writing was not yet, and nor will it be, because he's going to be one of the externalizing masters. From everything that I can gather, I mean, that is the case. And so that certainly means that during the age of Aquarius, he will be with us in objective presentation. So we're dealing with internal fires. And mostly we're dealing with them in terms of the systemic or solar plane, the etheric physical systemic or solar plane. Either way you can call it solar or systemic. And the very first description is one of latent heat. The latent heat is found on the lower three levels, subplane, well, it depends on how you count, but subplane 47, 48, 49, or subplane 1, 2, 3, depending on how you count. So it demonstrates, the internal fires demonstrate first as latent heat. Heat is a form of activation, and the greater the vibratory frequency, the greater the heat, at least in terms of our normal understanding of events upon the lower three planes. So latent heat comes first, and this is the basis of rotary motion and the cause of the spheroidal coherent manifestation of all existence. In general, sphericity or a spheroidal form is the norm, even though, we've been told that the causal body can appear in three different modes: the spheroidal form, the ovoid form, and then something called the elongated form. Probably all this depends upon the ray of the causal body. And, I don't know if I can discriminate between the ovoid form and the elongated form. Maybe they are the same, but they are mentioned separately. So this latent heat, this kind of heat is connected with the third ray. Anything going on there natively on the etheric, physical, systemic plane is connected with the third ray, generically at least, even though the etheric body can carry all kinds of different energies, including different kinds of ray energies. And so this fire, this latent heat, is the basis of rotary motion, which is repetitive, and the cause of the spheroidal coherent manifestation of all existence. All existence, because even though we look at some forms, whether it's a man or a starfish, and we think we have an articulated form which is not spherical, ultimately it is. The more internal forms where the real entity is found turn out to be spherical or approximating sphericity on those higher planes. So this rotary motion, whether we're dealing with the logoic atom, for instance, the sun and its solar system, let's say, well, the sun, the logoic atom, let's say, the solar ring past knot, it's another sphere, the mathematics of which, he says, is too difficult for us at our present stage of understanding. I'm forgetting how long it takes for this atom to rotate on its axis. The sun itself, I think, is about every 27 days, and it seems to rotate in bands, which is peculiar. But the entire solar ring past knot rotates as well, and it can be derived by some form of mathematics which we cannot assess, we cannot understand yet. And I think it's many, many years. Somehow the term 100,000 is in my mind, but I don't know where I got it from. And maybe it's one of those things that I call reference imagined. There's also reference lost, and then there's the actual reference. So this rotary motion is responsible, this tendency towards rotary motion, for the rotation of the logoic atom, also the solar ring past knot, and down to the minutest atom of the chemist or physicist. Now, it's hard to say what he means by an atom because it's such a general term. And, we have an idea of what is meant by the term atom of the chemist or physicist, but there are constituent parts to it. And they are certainly not all material in the dense sense. The etheric permanent atom on the first subplane of the systemic, normal systemic etheric physical plane, is made up of many lesser constituents, which we call, or is called by Jinara Jadasa and by Leadbeater and Besant, or Besant, the bubbles in the koilon. And I think there's something like, now I have to review whether it's 14 billion or 14 million bubbles in the koilon, which are producing this etheric permanent atom. And then fewer and fewer bubbles are involved. Are these bubbles considered atoms in their own right? Because, as I say, DK's term for atom is pretty general. If a man can be an atom, if a planetary logos can be an atom, if a solar logos can be an atom, and on up through cosmic and supercosmic logo and to galaxies, which can be huge atoms relative to our scope, then maybe we can take the normal atom of the physicist or chemist apart and find what DK would call lesser atoms. So we don't know what is that minutest atom yet. We don't know in our solar system what it is. As I say, I've called it a UP. It's kind of a peculiar term. The UP is the ultimate particle event, is the smallest universal logoically atom allowed in cosmos. And when I say allowed, I mean that, as I may have said, it's my speculation that the universal logos calls it quits at a certain point and says, thus far shall my minuteness extend and no further. So there is a smallest emanation, which I call, for any universe, which I call the ultimate particle event. And maybe the bubble in the koilon is not that. Maybe the bubble in the koilon, as minute as it is, and as a constituent of much larger atoms, is still very, very large and complex, and has lesser constituents. Well, maybe, particle physics will get into this eventually when other planes are studied, other than the physical plane. So, you know, it's a vast subject, a huge expanse, and we're not equipped yet. We're just beginning with the fourth ether to penetrate the very evanescent, fast disappearing particles in that fourth ether, which for us in a way is the first ether we encounter. So latent heat then is particularly the basis of rotary motion, and fire by friction as a whole is related to rotary motion. But in this description, it's the lower part of fire by friction, which is particularly causative of rotary motion. Fire by friction for a human being exists within their personality. So FBF, for a human being exists in the personality. Cosmically, fire by friction has a much greater expanse. And even our four ethers, four cosmic ethers, which are, we know, Buddhic, atmic, monadic, and logoic, are part of or display cosmic fire by friction. So these are still relative terms. It depends on the kind of being we're talking about. Now, as I say, normally for us, fire by friction is the etheric and dense physical energy, but our astral body is animated by fire by friction, and our lower mental body by fire by friction. And we begin to display solar fire on the higher three subplanes of the mental plane. So this is the first kind of internal fire. Latent heat, let's put it like this, latent heat is the first and lowest kind of internal fire in the solar system. We're, in a way sticking to our local neighborhood here. The difference between this and astronomy is that we're trying to give a psychological and a subtle understanding to what astronomy is detecting in a more outer and concrete way. Astronomy is not yet astropsychology. So let's put it like that. Astronomy, the study of astronomy, is not yet the study of astropsychology. But there's so much astropsychology and ray psychology in this book, which is a kind of psychological extension or even key to the secret doctrine. So we're studying qualitatively the inner life of outer entities qualitatively. That's what we are doing. We are here studying, only I could type, the inner life of outer entities from a how can I put it? Cosmo-psychological perspective. So the study of astronomy is not yet. Cosmically, fire by friction has a much greater expanse. And I think I better get rid of some of this. Much greater expanse, even our four cosmic ethers, and then I name them, and then I'll put this here. We are here studying the inner life of great, let's say, outwardly detected entities. such as i.e. planets, suns, constellations, and even galaxies. But of course, that's just theoretical for us. Okay, now, active heat is the result, this results in the activity and the driving forward of material evolution. Now, whoa, no, that's not right. I'm sorry. I try to keep this clear in case we're going to be reading along while we listen. If there is a driving forward, then first ray motion is involved. So interestingly, the etheric, the four etheric subplanes of our usual systemic etheric physical plane have a kind of a first ray relationship to the outer dense condensations we call the normal physical plane of gas, water, and density. The driving forward is from the archetypal level. There is a driving forward from a kind of archetypal level, the systemic ethers. Now, so far, when we talk about active heat, we're dealing pretty much with this down here. This is the normal systemic etheric vehicle or etheric plane and its subplanes. But DK can lift that whole thing and discuss it in a more cosmic way as related to a higher four, well, first here, a higher four on the cosmic physical plane and a lower three of density on the cosmic physical plane. Then the next step would be, see, in a way there are three steps we can deal with in terms of the charts that we have. We can deal with down here with the systemic etheric physical plane, 4 ethers above 3 dense levels. Then we can deal with 4 cosmic ethers above 3 cosmic dense levels, which are our usual planes, mental, emotional, physical. That's the dense part. And Buddhic, Atmic, Monadic, Logoic is the etheric part. You know, by now we should have that analogy in our mind. You might wonder, why do we have to know all this? Well, you know, we don't have to know all this. DK knows about this, knows it, and it allows him to see development in context, human development, our development, the development of the entire human race is seen with accuracy and in the proper context. And usually our view of things is inaccurate and out of the proper context. And we would prefer something different. Now, in terms of supercosmic ethers, they are the 4 cosmic planes here, and the dense supercosmic levels are these lower 3: cosmic mental, cosmic, astral and cosmic, physical. So we've taken 3 steps now. I remember, Tuya liked to put these things together and made a bunch of printouts about the charts, and she taped them together and at least reached the next level. As she stood on a chair with 7 of these images taped one above the other. And this was the lowest. And she would be then dealing not just with a super cosmic being, but a super cosmic being. And we don't exactly know what outer structure in cosmos we can connect with a super cosmic being. Eventually, we will reach the galaxy, and about the Andromeda galaxy and our own Milky Way, the masters know something. They have, we are told, some identifying letters or glyphs that tell them something about the nature of these great island universes we call galaxies. It's a tremendous cosmos relative to our own tiny emanative condition. We, microscopic man, as the Tibetan says, but we can learn something about where we fit in all this, and have yet again the anticipation of an ever expanding and deepening future capability of execution and of consciousness. Our intelligence will continue to expand towards universal presence and activity, and our knowledge will continue to expand towards universal omniscience, all-knowingness, and our potency will continue to expand towards universal omnipotence. But even the universe is just an infinitesimal drop in the bucket. So big and little, these have to be addressed in a way which is more filled with understanding than just what seems big and what seems little to us, relatively. So we're grateful to DK here, on page 344, and Keith Bailey contributed to the coloring of these charts, and to a still more refined use of color, exemplary, I would say, and they are something that we can really study and find our place. We, as tiny little monads. Well, the essence of a monad is never tiny. It is being itself, but the way that being is encapsulated in a material vehicle of a certain kind on the monadic plane, or maybe beyond on the logoic plane. These encapsulations are important, and they do limit the expression of monadic power temporarily, but not forever, because the day will come when omnipotence in the universal sense is ours. Whoever we are, our identity will be changing as we go. Our sense of identity will be changing as we go. So the second type of heat here is active heat. We had latent heat, and all of this is in internal fire. So we have three categories, and one of them contains two. So let's just remind ourselves here what we're doing. So we are studying internal fire, consisting of latent heat and now active heat. And I think we can pretty well look at active heat as the etheric pranic component. The etheric pranic component of internal fire. Component. Okay. This results in the activity and driving forward of material evolution. You kind of have to ask, what is forward? Well, maybe, for evolution to go forward, heightened sensitivity and frequency have to occur. For the evolution of the dense physical plane, there must be ever heightening sensitivity and ever increasing, and up to a point, frequency of vibration. Now, what DK does, and a number of writers in this field, they do it, they get a little more light on the subject here. They switch levels, and oftentimes they don't even tell you they're doing it. I think, Blavatsky really does this. But DK tries to give us a signal that he is switching levels. On the highest plane, the combination of these three factors, active heat, which would be the etheric, the four etheric subplanes of the logoic plane, and latent heat, which would be the fire of the three denser levels of the logoic subplane, and the primordial substance which they animate, meaning the type of matter, is known as the sea of fire, of which Akasha, on the second, doesn't belong there, does it? Akasha on the second systemic plane is the first differentiation of pre-genetic matter. The sea of fire is pre-genetic. There are forms within the sea of fire, because he tells us about forms within Shambhala. Okay, so pre-genetic matter is the matter found within the sea of fire. And Akasha is the beginning of a differentiation from that relatively undifferentiated sea of fire. There, in true Mula Prakriti, in the universal sense, there just is no differentiation. But by the time we have precipitated the lower planes, given, let's say, a great plane like the cosmic physical plane, the highest level of it is muloprakritic, but in a much more differentiated manner. We do not keep the absolute non-differentiation found on the very highest subplane of cosmos. So on the highest plane, the combination of these three factors, active heat, which is, let's just see, the etheric, so to speak, etheric portion of the logoic plane, and latent heat. Well, it's the active heat is the fire of the etheric portion of the logoic plane. It animates it, probably comes from the sun, and Leo does, in an interesting way, through this hierarchy of divine flames, Leo does animate the highest subplane, we call logoic, highest cosmic subplane, or just our highest systemic plane. Latent heat, which is the fire of the relatively dense portion of the logoic plane. And the primordial substance itself, primordial substance is the matter of the logoic plane, differentiated on each of the subplanes of the logoic plane. Now, all of these units of matter, let us say, are differentiated by their frequency. And maybe there are other differentiators. I mean, we certainly, in the realm of the atom of the physicist or the chemist, we have a lot of ways to differentiate one from another. Often, you know, how many electrons there may be, how many electron shells there may be, what is the internal weight of a nucleus, and so forth. I'm not a chemist or a physicist, but you know, those few things seem to remain in my mind. We have great differentiations in our normal atom of the physicist or the chemist. Now we go up onto these other planes, our other kinds of atoms are much less complex, but I assume they have to be differentiated by subplanes. And you know, what I'll do is take a look here again, and every one of these levels of the logoic plane is still atomic, I judge. And the I think the bubbles in the koilon pertain very much to the highest sublevel. And then after that, it's all a question of combination. And then when we finish with the logoic plane as a whole, we get into genetics, or the generation of ever more complex forms, but there are at least 49 forms of atoms. At least, well, maybe I exaggerate there slightly, but it seems to me that there are 49 levels, and that each of the sub-levels, certainly of the etheric, normal etheric plane, would have differentiated atoms, because we have different kinds of abilities and powers on each one of these subplanes, and it would require differentiation. Different points of tension open the door to the energies of a particular subplane. And now when you look at the idea that each one of these little bands, they are spherical in the last analysis, has 7 subsidiary categories. So there's 49 here, 49, 49, 49, until we reach 343 subplanes. We have to think that there is either differentiation of frequency on the majority of them, or differentiation of state. Like down here, you know, the atoms may remain what they are, but here they're in the gaseous relationship. Here, a liquid relationship. You know, they get into, the physicists know how to determine what is gaseous, what it is liquid or liquidity, and here the most dense, immovable, stationary, well, what are the words? Relationship. Anyway, the important thing to know is that there's a lot of differentiation of frequency on this great cosmic plane, the cosmic physical plane, which is where we normally spiritualize ourselves and ascend. And so it is on the other and higher cosmic planes, we assume. I think a big question is, we judge there is an atomic nature to every plane on this cosmic physical plane, and these are cosmic subplanes. There's a differentiated nature of the structure of the atoms and their frequency of vibration. And there is that same kind of differentiation will exist at least on the higher 4 ethers of each of these planes. And then we have potential differentiation when we divide a little subplane here by 7 again, and we have subplanes, and at least on the higher 4, there would be vibratory differentiations, but perhaps the lower 3 are just changes of state, which are analogous to gas, liquid, and utter density. So this is something to study, and we don't have the means to do it, but we can speculate about how many vibratory differentiations there are on the cosmic physical plane. There are at least 7 big ones, because, you know, let's just say an etheric atom is not the same as here's the etheric atom here, not the same as an astral atom. It's not the same as a mental atom. So somehow there are at least 7 great differentiations of frequency, and within those 7, there are lesser differentiations of frequency, may be connected particularly with the higher 4 subplanes of each of these larger subplanes. And then when we start looking at every subplane, maybe we have a 7-foldness again, and the differentiations occur on the first 4 subplanes, and the changes of state occur on the lower 3 subplanes. Anyway, it's beyond us to really know, but at different points of tension, we are able to access different energies according to their frequency. That's the important thing, and our spiritual training helps us to intensify our points of tension so we can penetrate into ever more subtle worlds. Right now, if we have some kind of astral experience, we may think it's a big deal, a penetration, but we have to remember way back when, in Atlantis, all of us could do this. So real penetration into something new is going to begin over here in the conscious connection with the higher 3 subplanes. For instance, spiritual discernment on the 3rd sublevel, a response to group vibration on the 2nd sublevel, and spiritual telepathy on the 1st sublevel. Now, those are real penetrations into levels of consciousness and levels of power that we did not have before. So it's quite a complex picture, but what we should do is just extract the idea that our spiritualization is a matter of constant refinement and the ability to increase our point of tension so that new subtleties of consciousness become ours. And with those subtleties of consciousness, new powers, new cities, if we start working on the Buddhic plane, comprehension of the 4 sounds, and maybe this is healing here, maybe this is divine vision, maybe this is intuition. I think if I try to go back to that chart, and here is idealism, and over here we have on the 1st level, these are powers: beatitude, active service on the 6th level, realization on the 5th level, counting from above, perfection on the 4th level, and all knowledge, at least of our globe and planetary chain, let's say, on the 3rd down. So this whole thing, which is basically the cosmic physical plane, is our playground for developing ourselves spiritually and for rendering service to others who are trying to develop themselves spiritually. This is where we work now. And even the Christ and the Buddha still have not begun working exclusively on the cosmic astral plane or cosmic mental plane. Even the Christ and the Buddha are still confined to this cosmic mental plane, though way above our capability. They have not been liberated on the way of high revolution into the cosmic astral or cosmic mental, or in one case at least, the cosmic Buddhic plane, where such beings are on their way to becoming solar logoi. So just try to, get into your mind the great extent, the vastness, the depth of what you are involved with, the great depth, the great extent of what you are studying, and your place as a tiny emanation within this vastness and depth. We should carry that with us because it will induce not discouragement, but what I would say humility, which is an adjusted sense of right proportion. So, what have we here? Okay, we have to kind of go back here a little bit. So, we can combine etheric heat, active heat, prana, with the latent heat of dense matter. It's really, combining vibrations, and we can blend that all together with the primordial substance of any plane. So we have the type of substance energy and that which is further animated by the substance energy, or let's just say that which animates the substance energy, namely latent heat and active heat. So on the highest plane, the combination of these three factors, active heat, latent heat, and the primordial substance, it's a three, which they animate, is known as the sea of fire, of which Akasha on the second systemic plane is the first differentiation of pregenetic matter. And that's the matter out of which the sea of fire okay, this may have been there's just so many buttons, so I may have been on the soft side here. Now maybe I'll be on the loud side. Let's just see. I have increased the volume to my usual level, and it was quite a bit less. So I'm hoping that you've been able to hear, just turn the computer up the volume level, and it should be okay. Okay, so I've gone into some differentiations here which are possible, but naming the frequencies is not possible. We have some frequencies among the spiritual numerals, what kinds of vibrations of a string, let us say, cause a certain note, what kind of vibrations result in us registering a certain color. But what we're dealing with here is much more subtle than that. Now, my son said to me, "Dad, don't you think you'd be better to move on a pace here? Just keep going and don't go into so much detail." Well, the ray of detailed knowledge or detailed unity afflicts me. But I just want to say that what I have previously done is give you the commentary in written form, mostly. And now I'm trying to synthesize that in a still more complete manner, or to detect the articulated synthesis of any subject that we may be dealing with. So even though we're focusing on one particular subject, it's sort of tendrils of potential knowledge reach out and cover a lot of DK's teaching. Not all, of course, but various things can be pulled in if they seem relevant. And that's a little bit of the different approach now in just talking to you and talking among ourselves. That's a different approach. So I think, in terms of assimilability, my son may be correct. But in terms of what I'm trying to do here is to take any subject and maximally, or at least, if not maximally, at least relevantly relate it to other items in DK's teaching. That is a different approach. Now let's see here. This is still part of a footnote. And, these are just names. And the names have to do with, I'll try to make this a little bigger. Oh, I can't make it too much bigger. A little bit, maybe. Yeah. So we're in this next little section, the chart deals with the highest three systemic planes on the cosmic physical plane. And this is a collection of material. I'm not even sure that DK collected this, but he certainly gave it the okay to be included in the book. So this is the page from which you can find that. And one easy way to find it is in Esoteric Astrology, page 35. So 34 and 35 give you two charts, and here is the one dealing pretty much with the cosmic astral plane, differentiations as far as they go. As I say, I knew a man who really got into this, and he was a third ray soul, and I do believe that was the case. And although it's hard to differentiate sub-levels on the cosmic astral plane, this particular chart seems to do it, and he took things much, much farther, so that it became a design, but of course with words attached, but we could not really decipher meaning. So anyway, the next little chart will have to do with these three systemic subplanes: the logoic, monadic, and atmic. And here it is. So this logoic plane is called the Sea of Fire. It's also called the Adic plane. Adi, I guess it means number one. And then comes the monadic plane, and its particular quality is that of Akasha. It's also called Anupadaka, or paranirvanic. I think Anupadaka means parentless. Now, if it derives from the logoic plane and from differentiations of pre-genetic matter in the sea of fire, is it really parentless? Because it does derive from a kind of emanative parent. But okay, we'll just leave it with the definition that we have been given. And then comes, so this logoic plane is the plane of Shiva. The monadic plane, the plane of Vishnu, Surya, and the atmic plane, the highest plane of the superhuman worlds, it's Brahma is the ruler, and in a way Brahma is the ruler of all lower planes, all the lower four, with the atmic plane being the first. So the atmic plane is the first, and yet it's the third. It's the third in this chart that we see before us, and it's the first of the 5 lower planes. And we remember, or have I said it, the number of Brahma is 5. The number of Vishnu, Surya, is 7. And we're working on that these days in this solar system. And the number of, it's not the logic plane, goodness. That's what happens when corrections are allowed. The logoic plane will be the most prominent in the next solar system. Its number is 9. And so Shiva rules there. These are the great Raja Deva lords with whom Sanat Kumara consults. 2 of the ones with whom he most frequently consults apparently are not on this map. They are Varuna, astral, and Kashiti, physical or etheric, physical. And of course, we also have to deal with Indra, mental, and Indra, Buddhic. So I think I mentioned before, there's a question about the identicality of systemic root matter, or mula prakriti, cosmic root matter that is, and systemic root matter. Are they identical? And I tend to think, while they all, relative to their system, you know, the context in which they play their part, are to be considered as the least differentiated relative to what comes from them. Cosmic mula prakriti is different and far more, well, maybe completely undifferentiated. But then, you know, Fohat comes along, and the first outpouring, which is of the third aspect, and digs holes in space. In other words, it creates vortices within the non-differentiated state, and then you have the beginning of the material differentiation, the different kinds of atoms, which really are not material at all. They are energy substance. And out of those differentiated atoms, which Fohat has differentiated, there is a building of them into form under the second aspect. I say here, the question can be put in this way: is the pre-genetic matter found on the first subplane of the solar system completely homogeneous or only relatively so? And I'm assuming relatively so. Assume relatively so, and that the only intra-universal undifferentiated state of objectivity is universal root matter, or universal mula prakriti, out of which everything is made. Everything, out of that, everything arises. But then again, what is it? What is mula prakriti really? And in a psychological universe, it is the self-reflection of the self-seeing or self-observing universal logos. At least that's how I see it. And I discover, some old Kabbalistic connection. In the Manly Hall book, it shows a great man, great being, looking at itself in the reflected in the water, exactly, upside down, of course. And is it called macroposobus or macrosopus? I'm not remembering exactly, but turn to the Manly Hall book. Francis Donald is lecturing on that and holding sessions every month, and you'll be able to gather something out of that great book, The Secret Teaching of All the Ages. And there's a reflection, and I believe that reflection of the great entity is Mula Prakriti, and that Mula Prakriti did not exist before the reflection existed. So the one great universal logos has to have the power of registration or consciousness in order to see itself as Mula Prakriti. So there's the question, does consciousness precede the existence of universal Mula Prakriti? Now, we might even say there's such a thing beyond any universe of super universal Mula Prakriti. But we can't really, when we start dealing with the one absoluteness, absolute, we'd be advised to stay away from calling it by any one name and saying this is it, because we're going to be incorrect. Within that absoluteness, there is no observer. And you need, according to my theory here, you need a self-observer to create Mula Prakriti. It's not out there somehow. There is no out there. There's only an in. And even you ask, can there be a in without an out? And maybe not, but at least the word in has a suggestion of a kind of interiority, of keeping all differentiation within one's own identity, all differentiation as arising from within one's own identity. So, okay, that's a little bit about what we might call pre-genetic matter. And is it pure Mula Prakriti, or is it pure with respect to the system that's going to be generated from it, but still relatively differentiated compared to completely undifferentiated root matter mula-prakriti on the cosmic level. We're noting the importance with respect to active heat and the driving forward of material evolution. And as I've said, the driving suggests that active heat has a general or generic first ray association. Archetypes drive their material reflections. Now, there's an old saying that suggests the first ray. Nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. I don't know who said that, but I think it's very true. And with these archetypes that embody the divine purpose, according to the plan, they have a certain time for objectification. Otherwise, they remain as subjective causes, awaiting their moment when they can drive matter into the kind of form that, reflects what they are. The archetype is driven out into objectivity, maybe through a process of self-observation and emanation. It's driven into the condition of existence. The X part means to separate from. And it's driven so outward, so it becomes a observable object. And more than that, once it is an observable object, it is driven towards its archetypal destiny by these etheric energies. Sometimes the sixth ray has a driving power too. But let's just say that our little etheric plane with its 4 subplanes is archetypal and to the dense physical, more inert levels. It doesn't really know how to form itself into forms which are appropriate for this second solar system. And it needs the archetypal impression of the etheric subplanes to bring about the forms of dense matter which are required in this particular solar system. I mean, just think about it for a minute, We've been associated with our solar logos for a long time. And maybe there's some kind of emanative continuity from system to system, or maybe not. I mean, you can ask yourself this question, who was I in the previous solar system? But the point is that in any solar system, you are essentially that which has its home within the sun. You are some kind of system-wide monad, which is all inclusive of all other monads. And maybe that's just who we are in all of these systems, and we must not look for some specific emanation in the other previous systems that we identify as myself. As we go along, we become more and more. But on a universal level, what I'm saying, I think, is definitely true. We re-become the universal logos, and in the previous system, we were the universal logos, and in the previous system, we were the universal logos until, 5 universes have expired. We're in the 5th now, which is the second major. And you cannot go looking in the previous universe for what you can call yourself. You are the whole thing. And right now, there's a kind of many specialized expressions of the whole thing. And you could say, well, I'm one of those specialized expressions, but I think we will learn that we are as much any specialized expression as we are the one with which we identify. So there is a great sharing of identity. What I've said here is there's the distinction between the sea of fire arising through the union of active heat, latent heat, and primordial substance, and the primordial substance itself, which is only part of the picture. Primordial substance is, in the way we've been describing it, systemic and somewhat differentiated multiprokriti. And alone, it cannot be called the sea of fire because the fire is missing. The fires are the active heat and the latent heat, which are part of the internal fire. And these internal fires are the milieu in which those devas we call the Agni Chaitans live. The Agni Chaitans are units of fire within the sea of fire. And on the, especially what we're familiar with on the lower planes. There are, I think, Agni Chaitans on the Atmic plane of a much higher nature. There are Agni Suryans not only on the astral plane, but on the Buddhic, the higher Agni Suryans, which we should not forget. Higher and lower connect. And then there are Agni Shvatas on the lower part of the mental plane that connect with the higher part of the mental plane. So just the way there's a big solar angel for our solar logos and its causal body, apparently so, and the little solar angels that supervise man, in a way, come forth from that greater solar angel. There's something in us that's home is within the sun, and that part of the sun we call the angel of the presence of the sun, or the solar angel of the sun. So there's probably a relationship here between the greater Agnishvatas and the lesser, from which the lesser came from the greater Agni Suryans and the lesser. In other words, Buddhic, and then the lower plane astral, and the greater Agnishvatas and the lesser, the higher 3 mental subplanes and the lower 4. So there seems to be some kind of encompassing being of which these devas are a part. And without the sustaining power of the greater Agnishvatas, Agni Suryans, Agni Chaitans, the lower ones would not exist. Now, as magicians in the making, I think we have to deal with our little microcosm first. It helps to know about the larger picture, but we have a lot to master right within our own limited energy system. Now here he's speaking of primordial substance. I'm asking, is there a relation to Akasha? Called Akasha in the discussion of the three internal fires of the sun? And is that known as productive substance when discussing three internal fires of the earth? And bodily warmth in relation to the human being, that those are lower latent fires. So that's coming up. We can get into that. Different things emerge. What I tried to do is I was teaching maybe 6 or 7 classes on this at the same time in different places. So these points came up in group discussion, that another name for pre-genetic matter is Mula Prakriti, even though it is going to be a relatively densified Mula Prakriti. Mula Prakriti may be considering the universal logos as object. The universal spirit is the universal logos as subject. So I'll make this a little clearer. Mula Prakriti may be considered as the universal logos in its mode of being an object. The universal spirit is the universal logos considered as a subject. I think what happens, and of course this will have to be examined carefully, is that Mula Prakriti is in a way the first objectification, and it reflects the seamlessness of the universal logos before it begins to differentiate into emanations through the power of self-observation. And here is Mula Prakriti. I think I want to keep a lowercase Mula Prakriti and a higher case Mula Prakriti. In any case, the most undifferentiated root of any system which comes from it. In other words, let's say here we have the logoic, it's a sevenfold system, it's going to be. We have the Mula Prakriti of the cosmic physical plane, and from it, 6 other planes are going to differentiate or be differentiated with their various powers and types of matter and types of fire. The 6 will come out of the 7. Well, when you have something coming out of the 7, coming out of the seventh or highest, and you have those other six, the highest originating being from which all the others come is a kind of mula prakriti, root matter, root mula, root prakriti, matter. So, I ask, is there such a thing as relative mula prakriti? That's what I've been talking about. Different gradations of it, or is any compromising of the absolute density of mula prakriti a negation of the mula prakritic state? Well, let's just say the mula prakritic state is the least differentiated state of any system. Sevenfold, threefold. Well, I think sevenfold would be the best. Sevenfold system. 1 plus 6. Logoic plane is mula prakritic to the 6 planes which emanate from it, or take the central penny and surround it by 6 others, making the hexagon, the 1 and the 6, or maybe take the 7 planes of the great cosmos and the very highest plane, whatever that is, and we have no idea, is the generator of all lesser states. And each one of those lesser states has a kind of highest, or mula prakriti, mula prakriti, most differentiated. Oh, I'm getting that wrong. Each one of those states that comes out of the universal mula prakriti has a least differentiated state out of which 6 others arise, and so forth. I guess it all depends on the archetypes stored within the universal logos and which are objectified in mula prakriti. Whether it's the absolutely universal mula prakriti or the relative mula prakriti of systems which have come out of the absolutely undifferentiated mula prakriti. Now, I've said here that that which we call space and mula prakriti are the same. That is to say, space and mula prakriti are equivalent to the one and only homogeneous object, demonstrating no possible division. Now, the only division that is there is the division of that object from the supra-universal state. But now we're, settling down to being in universe. The universe does disappear periodically, forever. And it disappears because some great deity stops self-seeing. Okay, so let's see if I can get this correct. Any, not nice. Any universe will disappear when the great deity of that universe ceases, I'm going to make it memorable, ceases to self-see. ceases to self-see. So, we are all taking place, all this differentiation is taking place within a great universal being who is self-seeing all this into existence. All this, including our little selves, is being self-seen into existence. That's my way of generating reduction. The willful compression, or the willful reduction of that which the one great seer chooses to see. And then, of course, when we round the curve, as it were, we begin to see more and more, and we come back into our mode of seeing ourselves, and thus we realize that we have been generating every possible perception. But then now I'm kind of leaning over into the other class, and I have to be careful about that. If a monad, I'll capitalize it, has a vehicle, it will know its limited self. And I think I should capitalize that. Will know limitation. If the monad has no vehicle, and how does that happen? It will only be itself. Now, is it possible for a monad to have no vehicle? Well, the one universal monad self-sees its vehicles into existence. But in a strange sort of way, the whole universe is the vehicle of the supra-universal God or deity. And somehow, some finite aspect of absolute infinitude is expressed in every universe. So the universe is a vehicle of the trans-universal deity, which is the deity as it exists beyond any encapsulation in a finite universe. Now, what can we get out of all that? That we really are not only a great universal being, which we will again rediscover, but we are further the great supra-universal being we can call the absolute deity, which is different from the absolute or absoluteness. See, this deity, supra-universal, has the power of self-observation, but there is nothing like that in absoluteness. There's nothing there. It is pure. It is suchness. It is essence. It is ultimate substance or ultimate substantiality. A lot of words, but only to suggest that it is the be all and end all, except it never ends and it never begins. Okay, so we've been looking at various charts, and I just included them in DK's version. Tuya had not yet produced the charts for us, and now she has, and Keith Bailey, of course, earlier. Elaborating on the Tibetan's non-colored presentation. What else can be said here? Aether, not ether. Now let's see if we can get a hold of aether and kind of look at where we find it. Here is aether on the atomic plane. We're told that the monadic plane has ether, but really I'm tending to think of it as akasha. And then higher yet, this sea of fire. So different charts emphasize different relationships, and we have to keep all of this clear in our minds. If we want to be part of what's called the Society of Organized and Illumined Minds. So that would be hierarchy. The organization of the mental body, and I'm not saying that I have presented here an organized mental body. Sometimes I despair of doing that, but that is what is very important for us. And as Alice Bailey has said, we have to have a well-stocked mind, and things have to be in the proper place. Akasha, alaya, sometimes called universal soul, and the creative element in the akasha is sound. And that is the second plane, the monadic plane. And it's Vishnu's plane, this plane from which sound is distributed, is the plane of Vishnu Surya. Now, Surya is the sun god, and he sings the note G at this time, if the scale begins on the note C. He's singing the note Sol, S-O-L. And by association, this is the solar system in which we discover soul, the soul aspect. So these are just some equivalences. And as I just showed you, the akasha has to do with this second plane, or the monadic plane. Sometimes you wonder, with this power of Kriya Shakti here on this plane, this monadic plane, whether the Maya Virupa, the will-created body, is not somehow sung into existence. Now, that may not be as far-fetched as we can think it is, because in the future, generation between human beings will be done via the throat center and not via the sexual centers, and it will mean that the new embodiment, the child, whatever, is sung into existence. And Vishnu Surya, the singer, will have an important role in that, or the correspondence to the singer in the human energy system. So Vishnu, the divine singer, the second logos, transmitting the second ray, can be associated, I say may be associated, but I definitely believe it is associated on the monadic plane with Akasha. So the monad, in a way, is the singer. I guess sound is found productive of form on many levels, but as far as our microcosmic system goes, it may well be that the monad, considering it as a blend of the first and second aspects, is the singer, because it operates from the plane of Vishnu, Surya, and as I said, is that which has its home within the sun. Now just think of that for a minute. You as a monad, at least at this time, have your home within the sun. And what page is that in Initiation Human and Solar? I'll try to get it right here if I can. And here it is, and home sun, that's all you need. Okay, thus the solar lord, the inner reality, the son of the father, and the thinker on his own plane, becomes the intermediary between that which is of the earth, earthy, and that which finds its home within the sun. So the soul finds its intermediary place between the density, the intelligent density of the personality, and this monadic beingness, the monadic nature. Page 196. If only I could remember that page, because I like to go there quite a bit. On this elevator of being, we're always going to be finding ourselves at different points of tension. And the idea is to be able to slide between those points of tension in a way that is smooth. As I've said, just like when you sing, there are different registers in your voice. And an accomplished singer makes those registers smooth. And an unaccomplished singer, for instance, let's say a man goes from falsetto to regular voice, there's a big break. That kind of, it's a break. And a woman may have a break from her normal middle voice to her chest voice. But the idea is smooth the breakover. And that's what we have to do when we think of our three periodical vehicles: personality, soul triad, and monad. Eventually, to be able to be aware of any one of these at any level, and to go at will to any one of them without forgetting that the others exist. So maybe it is that Vishnu, monad, Surya, sun, creates through sound. and is singing the note G, fundamentally anyway, in this particular solar system. Other notes will be sung according to the intervals, or these other notes, according to the monadic ray, will produce intervals. All of us can produce chords which represent our energy system and the major notes of that energy system. Well, that's another track, but interesting and important because, you know, in the Pythagorean school or the school sponsored in the future by Master KH, mathematics and music and mathematics, they will be important. So might as well learn a little bit about it. And we've seen that in Letters on Occult Meditation, Master DK does talk about it. He makes musical references. And there are coloristic references too. Music, in, you know, notes and colors, they are called spiritual numerals. Maybe that is so because they are produced by different frequencies. Okay, so the sea of fire is produced from pre-genetic matter. What is generated are all the different states subsidiary to the logoic plane, if we keep ourselves focused on the cosmic physical plane. So we've examined that. We should note the triple constitution of the sea of fire. And I think somehow Tuya has shown this in the following diagram, which is something new that we talked about and looked for. And notice that there's a faint triangle up here. And maybe that triangle should extend down to the fourth level. I don't know. Maybe so, because those are the four subsidiary ethers of the logoic plane. But anyway, there is that faint triangle within the sea of fire. We don't have the sea of fire on the monadic plane. We do have it here on the logoic plane. I guess if I were looking at this now, I might extend that to the fourth level to embrace the lower etheric-like vortices on the egoic plane. You know, there are 49 vortices that are summed by the time we reach the logoic plane, and 42 on the monadic, and 35 on the atmic, and 28 on the buddhic, and I suppose, well, on the mental plane, both the numbers 21 and 28 appear. Anyway, different numbers of vortices characterize initiates of different degrees, as do the activation of certain vehicles. Now, you know, people like you and me, we don't have our buddhic vehicle completely coordinated, maybe not much coordinated at all. We certainly don't have our atmic vehicle completely coordinated, maybe hardly at all. There is a monadic vehicle but it's probably in a somewhat nascent condition. And then there's possibility of entrance into one of three circles or triangles on the logoic plane. Now, all of this may seem like a game where we're kind of, esoteric Rubik's Cube, taking it apart, putting it back together, but there is a subjective feeling that goes with all these different levels. That subjective feeling, is really important because it is experiential. It's not just a mental experience, as it were. It's a touchingness, which is more than an intellectual formulation. So let's see here. All right. So the sea of fire cannot exist unless two fires, internal and radiatory, act upon the primordial substance, or internal or latent, and radiatory or active. That whole idea about bodily warmth, I think, fits very well with the lowest of the fires. Can we say that the Akasha cannot exist unless the same two fires act upon the substance resident upon the second plane? In other words, if you really want Akasha, which seems to have a triangle associated with it, does it not? That triangle is the monad. So here we go. A triangle is connected with it. Just the way a triangle is connected here on the logoic level. So can we say that unless the two fires act upon the substance of the second plane, which is more complex than the substance of the first, that what we call Akasha cannot exist? So this is a subtle point and is basically an attempt to differentiate between fire per se and matter. Now, there's been some differentiation between fire and matter as we have been studying what DK has said. The second systemic plane, the Akashic plane, the sounding plane, the musical plane, maybe every one of those monadic circles is characterized by a different kind of sounding and a different kind of light. The second systemic plane, monadic plane, is characterized by the first differentiation of primordial substance, also called pre-genetic matter. Pre-genetic matter, sorry. It is not, per se, the first differentiation of the sea of fire. The first differentiation is called Akasha. So basically, we have some kind of primordial, we have a pre-genetic matter there, and then that is substance, energy, matter, and there is a kind of matter on the Akashic plane. The first differentiation of pre-genetic matter, and then there are two fires, perhaps, again. The etheric or active fire of the first four subplanes, of the monadic plane, and then the latent fire, the more bodily fire, the denser fire. What can we call it? It's a more physical kind of fire for the lower three subplanes of the second plane. Now, for all of these subplanes, and I think it's something to have in mind, four subplanes above are vorticular, they are etheric. They are an etheric portion of the whole plane. And the lower three are a dense, more latent, more condensed portion of the entire plane. And thus it goes. Four above and three below. Four above and three below. Four above, three below. And here, a little peculiar situation on the mental plane. It's kind of three above. And on the fourth level, there are actually vortices, but not yet are there vortices of this kind. On the higher three subplanes, that's where we have our space, our gap, our problem that we have to bridge. And eventually, when the solar angel goes, and with it the angel of the presence, then there will be vortices, just like we have them. Three vortices here, a triangle, and three vortices here on the astral and the etheric levels. Etheric, and etheric astral. So there's a mixture going on the mental plane. Things that are ours and things that belong to the solar angel, angel of the presence. I kind of combine those two terms, as the solar angel is that from which I think the angel of the presence is projected into the matter of the higher mental plane. Okay. And we talked about the first ray driving forward. And active heat is equivalent here, to etheric fire, radiatory fire. In the etheric physical system of any atom, whether it's microscopic or macrocosmic, it's the dynamic factor. It is rajasic, it causes movement. Latent heat is more passive and must be acted upon by active heat, and then its response can be powerful. This is really important. Latent heat is acted upon by active heat. We say that radiatory, well, let's just say that the dense physical fire, latent heat, the dense physical fire is acted upon by radiatory fire, and all within the context of the kind of matter in which these fires are burning. As far as akasha in manifestation, it expresses itself as Fohat. Many are the names for Fohat: divine energy, cosmic electricity, the great actor, Brahma, you know, the one who is activity itself, Agni, Fohat, Brahma, and Fohat on the different planes is known as, and here we have the fifth or the third plane from above, Aether, fourth plane from above, air, third plane from above, fire, fourth plane from above. Well, actually, wait, I got my count mixed up a little here, sorry. Aether operates on the third subplane, our normal systemic plane. Air on the Buddhic plane, it's the fourth. Fire on the mental plane, it's the fifth from above. Water is the sixth from above. And electricity, ether, prana, and such similar terms, that's the seventh from above, and pretty much confined or originating from the four etheric subplanes. It will have an effect upon the dense physical, of course. But we might say that Akasha derives from the sea of fire. And the material of the monadic or Akashic plane derives from the pre-genetic matter of the logoic plane. But what derives from Akasha? Now that is the Vishnu Surya realm, and from Akasha derives Brahma, or Aether. And here is this hint, you know, that Aether is associated with the number 3 from above and 5 from below. Okay. So we have that Akasha in manifestation expresses itself as Fohat. Vishnu in manifestation, Vishnu Surya, expresses itself as Brahma. The sixth systemic plane expresses itself through the 5 lower systemic planes, and especially through the first or top of the 5. So here are the different elements, and we're just learning now about electricity, its true constitution, and about ether in its lower aspect, and about prana in its lower aspect. So Akasha in manifestation is a fire, and Fohat is a third aspect entity associated with Brahma and the Holy Spirit, and Agni, I would say, and Agni. Fohat is cosmic electricity plus intelligence. Cosmic electricity. So its origin is very high. At least we can't even trace it, but from a certain point of view, its origin is the lower 18 cosmic subplanes. And here from this point down, 4 cosmic subplanes on the cosmic mental, 7 cosmic subplanes on the cosmic astral, 7 cosmic subplanes on the cosmic etheric physical. That's the realm, for the time being, as we can consider it, of Fohat. And that is the realm of Agni. Okay. cosmic electricity plus intelligence, and the servant of cosmic ideation. When there is a form or a pattern, a higher pattern to be brought into existence, Fohat is activated and engineers the objectification, the manifestation of cosmic thought form, cosmic ideation. It's the servant it embodies the ability to manifest cosmic ideation in a tangible manner. Fohat's called divine energy, the energy which produces manifestation. Fohat is connected with 5. It's a Tibetan word, I believe, because its action begins on the Brahmic plane, immediately below the plane of Akasha, and that leaves you 5 subdivisions or 5 planes under that. Fohat is related especially to expression. Akasha precedes Fohat, yes. All this seems to be saying that should the monad on the plane of Akasha wish to express, it must do so through Fohat or through some lower expression of cosmic Fohat. I mean, we have our own Fohatic energies, but of course they are just tiny reflections of what is happening cosmically in the realm of Agni. Usually, it's in the context of the solar logos that we consider Fohat, but we can't really stop there. We have to deal with other greater atoms like the cosmic logos and the supercosmic logos of the one about whom naught may be said, etc. Fohat seems to be related to the first, and I want to say major solar system. And the numbers we have discussed, 5, 7, and 9, totaling 21, and then taking the entire unit as a single, 22, that particular number. Stephen Pugh, he's done a lot of work on all these things. He's a cosmologist, rheologist, and very fine esoteric astrologer. He said that with respect to our solar system, 2 + 2 = 4. The number he theorizes for the monadic ray of the solar logos is 2, I guess. We have, every atom, I think, has 2 monadic rays, one of which pertains to the 6th plane from below, the 2nd plane from above, the commonly addressed monadic ray, and the other, the ray of the liberated monad. Well, liberated at least into a greater state of liberation, but still confined within the sphere of the Father, Son, or Holy Ghost. So we have a 24 going there in the monadic realm, and eventually a 2, for the monad, and the 22 relates to the soul ray of our planet plus not planet, I'm sorry, I must not rush. The soul ray of our solar logos and its 2nd ray personality at this time. So there was a lot of discussion on Fohat. And some of these, of course, in my wide ranging, I've taken them up. Just as the solar logos' causal body is located on the 1st subplane of the cosmic mental plane, and the causal body of the planetary logos on the 3rd, So it can be expected that their relative focus on the systemic monadic plane will be, or may be, differentiated. So, if we look here and we see the causal body of the solar logos on the first and the planetary causal body on the third, then maybe they have a different positioning for expression on the cosmic physical plane or within the etheric part of it. This whole upper plane here, logoic plane, is ruled by Leo, and the solar logos, whose causal body we're discussing, is the ruler of Leo, or a ruler of Leo. So the first plane is very important for that causal body. Maybe for the planets, the expression will be more on the usual monadic level. At least that's where the focus would be at this time. Maybe connected with the 7 rishis of the Great Bear. Well, that's a little too uncertain to speculate upon, but it's just a thought that the higher beings on one plane maybe have a higher focus on a subsidiary plane. Fohat, the great actor, running circles and digging holes in space and differentiating the most homogeneous matter available into further differentiations. The army of the voice related to Fohat, and in a way, Fohat follows orders given by the voice, which is the word. Think of it. Vishnu, the soul is the word. Vishnu is the soul aspect. Vishnu Surya, the singer. The sung word goes forth through the voice, and the army of the voice follows. And interesting, in Agni Yoga we hear the army of Maitreya, that it numbers 1 million. Well, that's probably a figure which is symbolic. But let's just say that the singing of Vishnu drives Fohat into activity. Now, when we speak a word, little elementals aggregate and follow the pattern of the word spoken. And there's an analogy there, of course. Fohat brings things into being through action. It arranges, moves things about, until in the Mosaic worlds, they approximate the world of being. Systemic Fohat begins with the action of aether, that is the substance energy of the third systemic plane, but maybe, the singing of Vishnu says, it is now time to act. So just think of it, when we can be within our own monad, liberated into our monad, we can create all kinds of lesser Fohatic actions within our lower energy system. The question arose regarding the nature of the sea of fire and Akasha, one and the two. If the solar logos, the first form on the cosmic physical plane, the first form occurs on the monadic plane, the plane of Akasha. So you wonder about Plato and his archetypes. And his archetypes, which he called the forms. And he didn't mean dense physical when he said that. But I did want to swing in here to I wanted to see if we could get AAB extracts to produce for us. Oh, no, wait a second, that's not good. I got to go back. AAB extracts, and I want to copy Shambhala. I want to copy Shambhala here and move that picture around, and let's see what we got. Down here, there will be something on Shambhala, and it will be this is one of the ones. And this is how Shambhala is discussed by the Tibetan. I'll read it aloud here. It is a world of pure energy, of light, and of directed force. It can be seen as streams and centers of force. Sounds like forms, doesn't it? All forming a pattern of consummate beauty, all potently invocative of the world of the soul. You know, invoking that which is below, and of the world of phenomena, still farther below. It therefore constitutes, in a very real sense, the world of causes and of initiation. So basically what I'm going to do, if I can, is put this quotation here and make it much smaller, of course. It's just too big. Okay. Anyway, the forms. Now the forms are existing on the monadic plane, definitely, but also in Shambhala, and also on the highest levels where the council meets in the Sea of Fire. Now we can understand that why masters cannot simply at will enter the Sea of Fire. And I suppose even Shohans are kept at a certain level. The very highest levels of the Sea of Fire. Can the Christ and the Buddha penetrate there, or are they limited by participation on certain subplanes within that general Sea of Fire? Okay. So there are forms, that's the point. There are forms also on the logoic plane. There are also forms on the logoic plane. And I'm suggesting here that the particles in the Sea of Fire are not as bound to each other. Vulcan, interestingly, he not only forges chains, he is, you know, one of those planets veiled by the sun. He's very close to the sun. So he's connected there. Vulcan has also breaks the chains, binding the fundamental particles to each other. So Vulcan makes chains and shatters them, and I think must be active. Must be active in the sea of fire. The concept then of Vishnu is related to the Akasha, one plane below, Jupiter, sound, pattern, archetype, ideation, monad. Those are kinds of terms that we can connect with the monadic plane. It's the second plane, so there's the second ray, the ray of the divine pattern. It's the plane of purpose rather than of will, although will is found there as far as man is concerned. It's an archetypal plane. There is ideation, high type of ideation. It is the world of being, and this ideation is made to manifest by Kriya Shakti, world of the monad. All these ideas are to be together, brought together under the influence, when we have it, of pure reason. The first systemic plane is above form, as we usually consider form, in relation to the cosmic physical plane, but not above the forms. High forms exist on the logoic plane, not just streams of energy, but centers and streams of energy. Centers of force, as we see up here, at the very top, centers of force and streams of energy. So the combination then of Vulcan plus Jupiter impresses the archetype. Jupiter, archetype on the monadic plane, archetype for the man on the monadic plane. And Vulcan, yeah, I just don't think we can get rid of the spiritual will without putting it in the sea of fire. It's such a fiery planet associated with the volcanic fires of the earth. Jupiter represents the timbre of the voice, the identifying, note this, the identifying vibratory pattern. And Vulcan is the power of the voice. So we're combining first and second planes here. I think that in the usual chart, the planet is the sun. But will it be Uranus? Will it be Neptune? Neptune is associated with the fifth grouping on the cosmic astral. Would it be Jupiter? Well, no. Yes and no. I mean, Jupiter is said to be veiled by the sun, but Vulcan is very much connected with the sun. I'm looking here at this map. We're talking about the realm of Leo Virgo, the two very esoteric subplanes, cosmic subplanes. And if we turn to page, where can I turn? Where can I turn? I'm going to turn to page 50 of Esoteric Astrology, and I'm going to see if I can find Vulcan. Now, this is it here. Let's see. And here it is, sun veiling Vulcan. So the sun indeed does veil Vulcan. And when we're in that sea of fire, ruled by the sun, ruled by Leo, Leo being ruled triply by the veiling sun, we do find a way to connect Vulcan. Okay. So I'll show that to you. I sometimes forget, but there it is. How these three great super constellations, and I think it maybe should be the Little Bear instead of Sirius, as the higher octave of Sirius in a way. But we see Aries, Libra, and the sun veiling Vulcan, and the great bear energies come through that. But that's connected with the second creative hierarchy. And the second creative hierarchy on the cosmic astral plane. And then I think with the first creative hierarchy on the cosmic physical plane. Well, these are words, and an intellectual pattern is being suggested, but in terms of the real feeling of it, that's a different matter. So the timbre of the voice is very interesting. How do you recognize one voice from another? Is because of the Jupiter quality, which brings in the ray of the divine pattern. It's the pattern here in the resonating chambers that produce the timbre of the voice, and there will be analogies to those chambers. Yes, and so we've been proving, or been trying to prove, that maybe we say that Vulcan, the sun is veiling Vulcan in relation to the sea of fire. I think so. I think we can suggest that. Yeah, I'm back there. And if I want to go here, well, I think our problem basically is that while the sun does rule, it doesn't tell us. I'll show you what I mean. On the cosmic physical plane, the sun rules this highest divine lives hierarchy, but it doesn't really tell us what planet it's veiling. And could it be Vulcan? That's the question. Because pretty much, at least with the first five, we have esoteric rulers. Venus ruling on the fifth plane, Mercury on the fourth, the rays correspond, Saturn on the third, Jupiter on the second, the rays correspond, and maybe Vulcan on the first subplane. But also, if we go still higher, well, that's where the Leo is found, on that first level. And basically, we're not given planets here when we're looking at the hierarchies of the cosmic physical, cosmic astral plane. We're not given planets. So the sun does veil Jupiter, it's hinted. Definitely veils Neptune esoterically, definitely veils Uranus hierarchically, and seems to be involved with veiling Vulcan in terms of the creative hierarchies. I mean, we look forward to the time when We're not just making an intellectual pattern here, but can fill in with a sense of livingness. So, if we continue from Venus to Mercury to Saturn to Jupiter, 5, 4, 3, 2, Vulcan will be the obvious ruler, the sacred ray 1 planet of that creative hierarchy that we call the divine flames. So the sun-bathing Vulcan probably is very important there. Okay, let's take a look a little bit more. In the Akasha, second plane, divine geometrical patterns based on sound appear. Well, even human beings are doing that now. They draw the bow over the metal on which the powder is spread, and immediately the pattern appears. So there is a close relation between sound, song, Vishnu singing, and the pattern of identity. Pattern of identity, but not the essence of identity. Essence of identity is always the same everywhere in cosmos and beyond. Essence of identity, pure beingness. The patterns of the Akashic plane, monadic patterns, are held in place by sound, Vishnu the singer, and the seer, and related to plane 2. So sound and light are occurring together because, we have this sequence, vibration, light, sound, color. But sound is very much connected with the Akasha, and since light is put in the second position, we have light and sound working together. Vishnu sustains the universe with his song, and Vishnu utilizes the Akasha, which then expresses itself through the aether and other subsidiary energies, states, planes, dynamics. So then, as I have asked, is the monad the singer? Okay. So one who knows the physiology of the voice said that when one sings, the circulation of energy passes through the heart. But in speech, this does not happen. I think Tuya mentioned this the other day. And if you want to learn more about that, consult with Harold Moses. All of us are little evanescences, If you're reading this 50 years from now, you can't consult with Harold or with me. We'll be probably somewhere else, or maybe back, but not knowing much. Sounding and intoning can be considered equivalent, and one can sing on one tone, and it is still singing. Melodic singing introduces the factor of variety which is needed to make distinct patterns. But inside a note, a single note, there can also be found a pattern. So is a unison entirely homogeneous? I think a unison can produce a pattern also, but melodic singing, of course, gives you the variety right out front. So some different ways of looking at Fohat were suggested. Fohat, the creator of matter through these digging holes in space. Fohat, the arranger, moving things about until they wind up in a pattern, which is reflective of the archetype. Fohat as the unifier, equivalent to Eros, a god of love. Fohat as the director, so we have a 3-2-1 there, arranger 3, unifier 2, director 1. And I didn't read these because I thought when we had our last session that it would just be too much, and probably it was a good thing too, because I had missed another webinar. And if I had gotten into this, well, who knows? But I think in the future, since I was so careful about suggesting certain things, and I've learned more since, I will tend not to shy away from what the groups produced and what I suggested. I will expand those tendrils of light, helping to link the Tibetans' teaching together in pure reason. Now, I think that's going to have to be enough for what we're doing right now, and we'll take up further definitions of Akasha, and we'll do it from a more stable position than when the computer is running out of control, just like the poor apprentice magician in The Sorcerer's Apprentice, the brooms carrying all the water and multiplying themselves. Somehow it made an impression upon me when I was a very young person in this incarnation. So let's see. Yeah, we're getting near the end of this particular commentary. There are many to go, but the thing is that, remember now, verbal commentary on these commentaries is not just limited to the subject, but is expanding and connecting many things, hopefully, in the Tibetans' teaching. And even though we go slowly, I think we will be able to fill in many untenanted areas. And we will have a clearer picture of the connections of things in the great unity. So let's, yeah, well, there it came. So this is program 2 of 5, which was, okay. Now, I said I had done 6 solo programs, and this is the 7th. And I think before I can make up for what went astray before, this is page 43, 42, there may be 3 programs that are in advance, making up for the 1 program when things did go amiss. And I think certainly I have a clearer view here, and I'm trusting that you do also. So this is what I, want you to have, and not so much what went on before. And 1, 2, 3, and there we go. All right, so this is the end. That was going to be program. This is program 31. Okay, program 30. Program 30. 7 of which, let's see now, maybe 6 of which here are solo. So I have now done, I thought I did actually 7 programs, 6 or 7. I'll let our communications team help me decipher that. And I have now done, I think, 7 solo programs. And this is all related to what I did on the 4th of September. So part 1 so far of program 30, part 1. And now I think I'm just going to have to do this as program 31. I hope so. And maybe this is 32. If I'm mistaken, then someone's going to have to help me out. So this is program 32, part 2. Program, probably, I'm in a mess here. Thus program 32, thus part 2 of the program presented on 4th September. But we started with the footnote 9, 10, and 11, and we're continuing. We continued. Okay, here we continued on page 42, 43, on 5th of September 20. Now we're going to go, hopefully, tomorrow. It may be the 6th, we'll continue, but let's just see. And continuing on the, let's say, the 6th of September, maybe a little earlier. And this will be the, I believe it will be the 8th. Let's see, I'm so sorry that we'll just have to get through this somehow. And I'm going to, beginning on page 43, not 42, 43, but beginning on page 43. And perhaps perhaps 8th solo program. At least that's what I'm hoping. Now, if I haven't made a extraordinary mess of the okay, then I will count myself lucky. But I do believe that some 7th ray brains will have to take over and make sure that this is straightened out, you know. Oh, maybe no laughing matter here. Anyway, we have few more pages, and at a certain point I'll stop because the next get-together will take up those. I think I'll go as far as some of these definitions of Akasha and some of what the Tibetan has said about the names of the Akasha and the Sea of Fire and so forth. We'll know a lot about those terms. I love this term, the sononiferous ether, the sounding ether of the Upanishads. It's to describe the Akasha, the home of the first phase of the monad. Now, if all this seems difficult, it is difficult for you, difficult for me, but it is a foundation. And as we go, you know, we will discover that we could have plunged right into the question of the soul, the way certain other books do, but we do need this material foundation. It's not as agreeable to me as to speak about the soul or even about the spirit, but it is necessary. And so I hope you'll have the patience, hope I'll have the patience to see this through. And hopefully there will be found some method of proceeding that will not end in 2050, 30 years from now, but will go through the book more expeditiously. And you can help by reading along ahead of time what I have written, and then I'll expand upon it. Of course, that's always the danger, expanding upon it too much. So let's, wishing you now then very best, and lots of love and many blessings from the whole communications group. And the teaching goes forth over the radio. This is our radio. And we become informed, more and more informed, so that when the great conclave comes, we can be in place in the best possible way, assisting in the best possible way. Well, that'll be it, and with the hope that we really have been recording all this, I hope so. We'll talk to you a little later, and many blessings. And the power of assimilation, may it descend upon you, may it descend upon me. See you then.